you spent over 25 years essentially working for and with the U.S. government. Did you get to a point where you felt like you couldn't do anymore and you actually had to leave that job so you could tell the truth and speak the way that you wanted to?
It wasn't that. It was that I was a hub in the middle of a wheel that wasn't going anywhere. It was like I was banging my head against the wall. What I'm known for in the community is not the best of the best when it comes to the cartels. The best of the best are some of my closest friends. What I'm known for in the community is bringing everyone together. I was a captain in the Intelligence and Counterterrorism Division. I moved 9 times across the state of Texas, a lot of that time along the U.S. southern border. I was a trooper in El Paso, Texas. I was an undercover narcotics agent in Brownsville, Texas. And then I was a lieutenant in Laredo, Texas, over 2 major drug squads as the war, as the cartels called it, began between the Los Zetas, which at the time were the most hyper-violent cartels in Mexico, and Cartel de Golfo, also known as CDG or the Gulf Cartel. And then I went to headquarters. I was a captain there. And what I realized very quickly is that we were failing on every front and that we were up against something that was absolutely spinning so rapidly out of control and that we couldn't do it alone as the state police in Texas, local law enforcement, no way they could do it alone. And even combined, it was bigger than all of us. And so we were going to have to work with all of the U.S. intelligence agencies, work with Mexico, and truly do precision-led intelligence operations to try to help rescue these migrants who are being killed and slaughtered by the Zetas. And that's what I'm known for, is trying to bring organizations and people together to try to stop this problem. And when that failed, when that didn't accomplish it, I was eligible to retire. I punched out, and then the rest is history. That's when I went public. And if you would have told me when I retired in 2016 that here we'd be 7 years later and things would be where they are, I would have never believed it. I would have never believed it. And that our media was as corrupt as they are on so many fronts, won't tell what's happening. I'm still surprised by it. It's still difficult for me to wrap it around my mind.
Do you think that the government actually wants to solve the problem?
I have briefed a lot of people in the United States government from U.S. intelligence agencies. I've been to the agency, worked closely with them. I briefed General Flynn when he was a 3-star at the Defense Intelligence Agency in his office on the cartel. So we had a great relationship with the Defense Intelligence Agency. Everyone at the Reagan building, DHS headquarters, undersecretaries. What I found out of Washington at the time before I retired is different than the way I view it now. At that time, it was, Jason, we hear you. We want you to know that we hear you. And we see it in the classified reporting. What we don't see it in is the data. And what I learned at that time is that they weren't lying and that all of us in the South weren't lying. What had happened was the reporting system was fundamentally broken in the United States government. So from 1934 to 2021, we leveraged a system under the Federal Bureau of Investigation known as the Uniform Crime Reporting System. And it captures 8 index crimes: murder, homicide, manslaughter, forcible rape, burglary, theft, and I'm missing one. And for the most part, you say to yourself, well, hell, that kind of covers it. But when you look at what we deal with within transnational crime, and where as a nation we have failed tremendously, it is in everything that you and I are talking about here. Drug trafficking. Can you believe we've been involved in drug trafficking for over 60 years and amongst 18,000 law enforcement agencies that we still cannot tell the American public how much dope is seized or not seized amongst local, state, and federal law enforcement? Massive failure. Human smuggling, human trafficking, weapons trafficking, drug trafficking, extortion. My God, I can go on and on. And so if as a nation you can't get the little things right, you're never going to get the big things right. And that's where we really were. Now, fast forward where we are today, I think we're in a different model. Everyone knows it's totally broken, but ideology has taken over. And if you look at what's happening, in the current administration, I try to stay out of politics as much as I can, but if you look at the current thing, millions upon millions upon millions of people coming into the country, whether you agree with migration, whether you don't, whatever your view is, where I am coming from, is what is going to happen to the American people. I know these cartels very, very well. They do not have Bordaloo stamped on their forehead. These, when you think of what a cartel is, how they operate, and how they're operating with state actors and non-state actors, every American should be scared as hell. The problem, though, is they're not being told how organized they are. And what I have learned, I briefed a lot of senators, a lot of congressmen trying to get the foreign terrorism designation. That's what I've been all about, to try to get new authorities beyond law enforcement. I'm the guy that started that in 2016 when I retired, is that they truly don't know. That's where we are. Most of the Republican Party elected officials tell me, because it's the very first question I ask now, when was the last time you were briefed, either classified or unclassified, by federal law enforcement or U.S. intelligence agency? You'd be stunned what I'm hearing. They can't get briefings.
Really?
If they were briefed, it was, oh yeah. If they were briefed, they were briefed by somebody that hadn't worked the border in 10 years. Most of their intelligence comes from Fox News. That's the right. Now, if you're on the left, it's CNN. So there's the polarization now has really broken the country. And what I'm trying to do is I live by just a very simple motto. I illuminate it to eliminate it. If I don't have to sell the border, I don't have to sell what the cartels are doing to people in Mexico, with migrants, with our own citizens. I just have to show it. And if I can just reach the American people, this shit sells itself. But the problem is getting to them. That is the core problem we now have, because media who holds the chains are not going to show those on the left what's really happening. Those on the right, many of them don't even know what to show. Some do, and those are where I go, and I do everything I can. But the problem is you become where you're preaching to the choir almost. And the goal is to reach those other people who can't get it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a challenge given the world that we live in, where you're bombarded with information every single day. People get really siloed too, and following the sources that kind of give them the theme or narrative that they believe in, their own personal ideology, whether it's from their upbringing, whatever it is. They get really trenched into those systems, and they don't want to hear information from other people, whether it's a legitimate source or it's a guy standing at the border with his camera trying to just show his personal experience. It's almost as if there's a resistance to, I mean, I don't want to say the word truth, because I understand that, you know, people have their own version of that, but let's say the reality on the ground.
I think that's well said. And then let me add a layer to it. Now add the fact that you're dealing with children who are being brought into debt bondage by the Gulf Cartel, literally so emboldened that they're putting wristbands on men, women, and children. I broke that story in February of 2021. Never seen that before. Now you overlay that with all of the other problems that we're seeing. You know, the fentanyl crisis, that it's almost too much that people don't want to bear it, so they turn away. The problem is this: you can turn away all you want, but this monster is coming.
Yeah.
And it will get much worse. And for the folks watching, as somebody that has built programs to go after these cartels and is trying to get and change the United States government to literally change multi-million-dollar and sometimes billion-dollar programs to focus the whole entire Homeland Security enterprise on this problem, I'm doing it for a specific reason. When I started this, we were just under 60,000 overdose deaths, really poisonings from fentanyl and other drugs in this country. We're now at 111,355, according to the latest CDC data that came out from April of 22 to April of 23. If you think this is going to stop, I want to be extremely, extremely clear. All you have to do is look to Mexico, just south of me, 100 miles from where I'm sitting right now in Texas. It's coming. And if you wonder how bad, look at what's happening in Mexico with first, second, third, and fourth generation armored vehicles, completely going from an organized crime into a parallel government. If you think 111,000 dead Americans is the end game, let me tell you, that's just the beginning. Because as they weaponize fentanyl and went from regular fentanyl to parafentanyl to serafentanyl, and now what do we see? The mixing of xylazine categories into it. And there's a whole nother set of zine categories coming online that Americans aren't being told by the Homeland Security enterprise. So I will say it again and again. If we do not focus on these cartels, get ready. Get ready. If we continue to attack the symptoms of everything you and I've talked about, drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, money laundering, this adjustment from smuggling to the trafficking of people, domestically, yes, we have to challenge that. But if you don't go after who the problem is, which is these cartels, and crush their labs, you're just seeing the beginning, because we are one economy of them. One. It's not a U.S.-Mexico issue, like you're always told in the news by these so-called experts who've never even debriefed a cartel member or know any damn thing about them. Sinaloa is in 54 countries around the world. Cartel Jalisco New Generation is in over 48, and they're the most hyper-violent in Mexico. This will only get worse. And I'm not trying to scare everyone. I'm telling you as somebody that knows them very well and who has warned and warned and warned that this was coming.